office, the export guarantee scheme had actually been stopped, but it was reactivated by this administration, and right now we have paid up all exporters their claims up to, I think, last year. Claims up to last year have been paid. Government has been paying them with promissory notes, and government is determined to continue with this scheme with a view to encouraging the exports of Nigerian goods. Yes.
Okay, now let's turn to Dr. Ken Ukwaha, who is the national president of Nigerian Association of Traders. You have listened to the Honorable Minister. He has touched on a very important aspect of this conversation this morning, being the Minister of Trade and Investment. And I wanted to speak to some of the issues you raised, because you are directly involved, in all of this. So what's your take on the efforts of this administration since 2015 to, of course, change the course of history of our trade and investment environment?
Thank you very much, Kirian. You may have to permit me to start with the subject at hand, which is our diplomatic relationship with Ghana. And this has to do with trade policy, and that's why I want to recall it. I have been, I'm sure you recall, before you and Kinsley on this platform for 3 good times on this same matter. And as we speak, from the December 1st, 2019, up till now as we speak, over 600 shops belonging to Nigerians are under lock and key in Ghana by the Ghanaian government. And this is trade. And the matter at hand is one that really calls for serious attention. If not, the entire fulcrum of trade and the economic relationship in the sub-region may have some kick-offs. Secondly is that when you are having a relationship with your brother, and each time he bites you and then he blows and says, I'm sorry, he blows, there must be something. It appears there is a music at the background that is being played that we do not still understand. And I think in diplomacy, in international law, there is diplomacy, quite right, in handling issues, but also there is a principle of reciprocity, which we must understand. And this would help us to really sit with and properly sit with the trade relationship between us and not only Ghana, and then between us and the world, so that we can also be respected. There is no country in the world where you don't find Nigerian traders. We have over 40 million traders in this country. And they shouldn't be treated this way. You know what happened to us in South Africa a few months back. And our people were killed and maimed and their investments destroyed. I think that Nigerian government should stand up at this time. Now, having said this, let me return to the Honorable Minister's speech. And I think, if you ask me candidly, for the past 5 years, this administration has really changed the game in many areas. I am not here to speak for the government, but I also talk about issues where we think things should be improved upon. And I hope the Honorable Minister would permit me when I look at that area. But first is to commend the government on, one, the subject of the EPA, advancing the course of the EPA from the past administration, and then looking seriously at what we had considered not viable option for the country, and then sticking to it to say, look, this is not good for the country. And then the president, with all the pressures that he received from the international community, from the European Union, he stuck to his gears and said, no, anything that is not beneficial to the country, count me out of it. That's number one. Number two is the subject of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which the Honorable Minister mentioned. I think it was also on this platform that the Ambassador Osakwe of the blessed memory, may God rest his soul, the ambassador and I were here. The rest is history. But again, we talked about the AFCFTA, and he was ebulliently, effectively managing the negotiations at the African Union. But then we discussed and saw that, look, yes, the management of the entire process at the African Union level, at the continental level, was going well. However, here, we are not having the indices. There were no analysis, no cost and benefit analysis of the structure and the contents of the AFCFTA. And in fact, there were no consultations among the stakeholders. And there was no way the president would go and put his signature on an agreement he does not understand the contents and understand whether this is good or bad for the country. And, you know, after speaking, it was from here. Immediately I left the gate, I was called. And I called Kingsley. I said, look, they have called me at the villa. I don't know what I've committed here. And again, Abakari of the blessed memory, may God also rest his soul. One of his staff called me and said, please, I am needed. I am at the NTA right now. I said, yes, I'm needed at the villa now. I said, what is this? Have I committed anything? And, you know, I told my lawyer immediately, and then I moved. I called my wife also. I moved to the villa. And they spoke to me 10 minutes, and they said, young man, you raised a lot of issues here. Nigeria does not have a trade policy. How are we going to sign? How is Mr. President going to sign an agreement of international structure and nature when we do not have anything at the background, at the foundation to host it? Number two, the issue of consultations among the people, because government does not implement agreement. It is the private sector. Number three is the subject of, you know, the cost and benefits analysis of knowing whether this is good or bad for the country and what exactly quantitatively are we going to receive at the end of the day. And then the man said, look, young man, if Mr. President does not go to Kigali, that was on a Thursday. If he does not travel to Kigali this weekend, would anything happen? As a lawyer tell me, I said, no, nothing will happen. After all, the president can get sick. If he gets sick, must he be carried life or death? And I went. But then, the rest is history. We had a meeting with the Honorable Minister then, and then the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Part of the history is that the president then didn't go to Kigali.
He did not.
That's right.
That's right. He decided there and then that he would not go. But we managed the situation, and therefore, it is a thumb up for this administration. And what is the benefit of not going? We now started in-house doing the proper work. Today, the president constituted all the necessary, you know, committees, and when the committee went through all the 6 geopolitical zones, sampling the opinions of the people that matter on this subject. And right now, we can have our eyes open. We are no longer jumping in agreement into the sea that we do not know the depth. We now understand whether we can swim and come out clearly. And here we have signed. And permit me to just a footnote. And the third angle, where we should also begin to commend the administration, because I want to finish up with the commendation before I come up with some, you know, maybe criticisms, but maybe some place to put on the agenda. The third point is the border closure, which was on the 20th of August, 2019. And I think that if there is any good thing that has happened to this country, that was one radical decision that the country has taken in life since I was born that I know. And that was good. One, it helped the country to stand up. Two, it also helped to kick ECOWAS to stand up to their job and responsibility. Three, it has helped us in the sectors that we are underlying and, you know, lying fallow, namely the textile industry, The Bendam boutiques of this world are going down. Now the textile industries, if they know themselves, they should be going up. 2 is the poultry sector, which is now also going up. 3 is the rice and other grains sector. And you can see all available statistics will show you that these things are going. I do know that I had a discussion with you, very serious discussion with you for almost 1 hour on this subject matter. And I think it's good to commend them from that angle. Thank you.
Ken Okoha, thank you very much for your opening salvo. You've already put the Honorable Minister on notice that you have the other leg of what you want to say. And if you check the spelling of commendation and condemnation, they are very close. Sometimes. All right, but your points are noted, and I'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's now bring in the President of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, who has also been a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Engineer Mansour Ahmed, of course, there is a lot to talk about the Buhari administration in terms of its intervention in MITI, MITI being in industry, trade, and investment. From your perspective, what are the significant milestones?
Well, thank you very much. I think I can only build on what Ken has already highlighted in order to save a lot of time. First of all, I think we must commend the present administration for several things. To me, the most important is for the way in which consultation and collaboration with key stakeholders precedes policy making. And I think this is very critical. And I would like at this stage to thank the Honorable Minister who is here also, because he has been building on that. Let me quickly highlight, for instance, that just at the time the coronavirus was starting, unlike what would have been the normal case, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment invited the Manufacturers Association and other key stakeholders to actually sit down and discuss how do we address this matter, not only to protect the health of our people, but also to ensure that their livelihoods are also protected. How can, for instance, we ensure that Nigerian manufacturing sector continues to produce particularly those essential commodities that would be absolutely essential for ensuring that we can address COVID, the health issues, but also be able to address the livelihood issues that will confront us. And indeed, I think we have seen in the last 3 or 4 months, there has been intensive interaction and consultation and collaboration between the ministry and indeed other aspects of government and the private sector in order to agree how to handle this. I think this is very, very important, because I believe that in the past, one of the things that has impeded Nigeria's progress was the fact that policymakers tend to go ahead and do policies without consulting those who ultimately, whose actions and whose conduct will determine the success or failure of those policies. And I think this is what Ken has highlighted very effectively with regards, for instance, to the African continental free trade arrangement. I don't think I want to repeat what you said, but clearly at the time the agreement was first signed in 2018, there was hardly any consultation. I remember, in fact, the questions we and Ken's outfit and others asked was, what are the benefits and costs to this agreement? What is Nigeria going to benefit? What will Nigeria going to cost? But even more importantly, what policies are we going to, do we have to put in place to ensure that we take advantage of this agreement? Particularly as we recall that in the past, particularly with the ECOWAS, for instance, we have signed but found that indeed we generally were at the losing end of this agreement. So we were determined that this time at the continental level, Nigeria will have to be absolutely satisfied that when we sign this agreement, we sign on the basis of what we believe will be in the best interest of Nigeria. And I'm very delighted that we all know that President Buhari put his foot down on this, insisted that we must be absolutely certain why we are signing is because of the interest of Nigeria. The interest of Nigeria will be served. And so the rest, as I said, is history. Now, let me quickly say, because I may not have the chance to now look at the other side of the coin. This consultation needs to be sustained. I must say at this stage, we are having some difficulties ensuring that we are following up what is being done, particularly with regards to negotiations. Indeed, yesterday I had to talk to the Minister of State, Miti, to say that, look, this consultation, we understand meetings are going on with the ECOWAS, where we are going to determine what items are going to be liberalized 100%, what items are going to be put on exclusive list, etc., etc. And we're not being taken onto account. And at the end of the day, it is the manufacturers and the traders in Nigeria that will implement whatever is agreed. So I'm glad to say that indeed the minister put her foot down and said this meeting must include the representatives of the private sector, and particularly the manufacturer of the representative of the Manufacturer Association. So I'm delighted that this consultation, this engagement between the policymakers and those whose conduct and whose activities will determine the success or failure of the policy are now working together. And I think this has to be sustained. And I want to add to Ken's comment that particularly with trade policy, we do need to actually have a very consistent, very coherent trade policy before we actually engage, before next year, when hopefully the AFCFTA will come into effect. Because at the moment, the trade policy is a bit loose, if there is one. And I think we need to tighten it. The approach that the minister is taking now, there shouldn't be too much difficulty in coming together to agree what are the key elements of policy. And I believe that this is some of the things that we need to do on a continuing basis. And I think it is on this basis that, in fact, previous successes in terms, for instance, of the ARGP, the economic, plan has been developed. I understand now there is a plan to review, because the ERGP, I think, and the economic plan is going to be reviewed. I think we need to see engagement continuing and intensified in order to ensure that whatever plans we end up with, these are plans that we are absolutely certain the operators, if you like, the implementers, those who will be affected by this plan, understand fully and can do it. We must also support these policies with detailed analysis, as Ken has said, because when the AFCFTA was initially being discussed, there was no study whatsoever. In fact, I think the Manufacturer Association was the first to undertake an in-depth study of the potential impact of AFCFTA on the manufacturing sector. Then it was followed by the ministry, I think, and the Office of Trade Negotiation. I believe that you cannot go into policy without, first of all, having a clear idea, a clear understanding of how this policy will pan out. Where are the key areas that you need to be planning for? Where are the success potentials? Where are the risks that you must mitigate? So that's one area that I think we will continue to work on. The second, I think the Honourable Minister has highlighted that indeed, through these policies, there has been some significant improvement in the investment climate and in the business environment. As he has said, we have moved quite substantially from, in the last 2 years, I think, over 15 places. We are now 131, as opposed to where we are before, almost at the top end, if you like, or the bottom end of the league. So it is important that we continue to improve the operating environment. We continue to. There has been a lot of also development in the in the financial sector, in the monetary sector. The central bank has been doing a great deal to support the manufacturing and indeed the business sector. And indeed, this is another area that we need to see a balance. The monetary policies and the interventions by the monetary authorities need to also be balanced and supported by fiscal policy. I'm delighted, again, the Honourable Minister is here. The last time we had a major meeting with the central bank, the Honourable Minister was there. And I believe he assured us that the ministry will ensure that fiscal policies are aligned with monetary policy. And this is beginning to show. So again, it's another thing for which we should commend the government. For instance, whereas the central bank is providing support to small and medium scale enterprises, and also ensuring that they can access funds to build their businesses, I believe the fiscal policy is also being tailored to support them. We know that, for instance, MSMEs that have a turnover of below 25 million naira are now not eligible for taxes, and those below 100 have significant reduction in tax. This is the kind of fiscal policies that we'd like to see. And I believe that in this context, this is part of what we look to ensure that the operating environment, the business environment, continues to improve. But I think this must be supported by also development in the infrastructure sector. We know that government, of course, in the last several years has focused significantly on infrastructure, particularly power, transport infrastructure. These are absolutely vital. One of the things we need to also look at is how we align these infrastructure development programs and projects with the direction of economic, if you like, trajectory. For instance, the road networks. The government is putting a lot of effort on developing road networks, on improving the road network system. This need to focus on those roads that actually allow access of the productive sector to centers of economic activity. For instance, roads that link the port system with the major manufacturing hubs, and of course, roads that provide access of agri-products or agricultural commodities to centers of manufacturing activity.
All right, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, thank you. You have just given an elaborate opening remarks there, which has as well touched all aspects of what the Minister and Dr. Ken raised. But you didn't actually speak about manufacturing. I hope you're going to have time for that, for you to let us know what is happening in the manufacturing sector. Because, of course, Nigeria is a country that many believe do not have any international product apart from crude oil. And we are believing that the manufacturing sector has come of age, and by now we should be having certain products that we can export to other countries. We'll come to that when we return to you in Lagos. For now, we are back to Abuja, where we have the Honorable Minister Otumba Richard Adeni Adebayo. You have listened to the two gentlemen, who I've also commended this administration for positive steps taken so far in this sector. And at this point, we would like you also to talk about the capacity of Nigeria to really industrialize. We have talked about policies. We have talked about steps that have been taken since 2015. But it does appear that we are slow in terms of getting into industrialization. You talked about industrial revolution. When it becomes a revolution, that means, every part of Nigeria will be put on one manufacturing company or industry, as the case may be. So what should be the next step now towards this revolution? We have already recorded the successes in agriculture, but I'm not sure we have enough cottage industries, to, of course, handle some of the perishable produce that come from that sector. And, of course, many Nigerians have shown their capacity in terms of developing what I may refer to as, products that are still at the infant stage. So what next?
Well, thank you very much. One of the programs of this present administration is the creation of 109 special agro-processing industries. The whole idea is for each territorial district to have one special agro-processing industry. We are in engagement with the African Development Bank for funding in that direction, and the whole idea is that we look at each territorial district and look at what products they produce there, what agricultural product is produced there, and the whole then we will now we will encourage the setting up of these industries for the processing of the products that they produce in those areas. So that is one area that we're looking at. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that the last administration, the administration in MITI before my administration came on board came up with a policy of special economic zones. Unfortunately, that got caught up in some bureaucratic crisis. However, we have looked at it and we have found a way to progress with what they were trying to do. So we are in discussions with Afrexim Bank, who are the partners of the ministry in that direction. And the whole idea is we will be setting up these special economic zones whereby the government will be the owner of the land. We will lease the land out to the operating companies. Operating companies will come, take the land off government. Government will provide outside the fence development, road, water, electricity to the to the industrial estates. The private sector will take over the running of it, will lease the place. They will do all the inside developments, build the factories, and lease out to people who will now come into those industrial estates for production. The whole idea is we want to take advantage of, you see, where there is a problem, sometimes one man's problem can be another man's opportunity. We see the pandemic as an opportunity for Nigeria to ramp up its industrial capacity, whereby we can now increase the amount of number of factories that are producing in Nigeria with a view to export. And that is the direction in which we are going. About 2-3 weeks ago, I invited the Chinese ambassador to a meeting. We met and we discussed extensively, especially because we were a bit concerned about the relationship between Nigeria and China, especially. I'm sure you remember that there was a lot of problems for Nigerians in China during this issue. And then I got a report that the Chinese companies in Nigeria were being attacked by Nigerians as well. So I was a bit concerned about that. So I invited the Chinese ambassador, and we had extensive discussions. And I pointed out to him that Nigeria is happy that Chinese companies have invested in Nigeria. We want more Chinese companies to come and invest here. The whole idea being that China should not be seen as it. I believe the whole world has seen that relying on one country for all your products is no longer a good idea. So we are looking at Nigeria being an alternative to China, even if it's just for this sub-region to start off with. So he was very excited about that, and he was keen. And there's a project that we have agreed to embark on, and that is the Made in Nigeria with China project. And he has promised to go and encourage more Chinese companies to come and invest in Nigeria for manufacturing of their products. So it will be made in Nigeria with China for export to other parts of the world. So these are areas in which we are looking.
As you're saying this, I just like to recall that your predecessor in office organized a number of what were referred to at the time as focus labs. And then they also had the idea of industrial clusters. And as you indicated, Honorable Minister, there were challenges with getting those industrial clusters. So I think you ran into some headwinds with the National Assembly. Now, you're also now opening up this new avenue for the Chinese, to set up manufacturing bases here. How does this new idea fit into those focus labs and industrial clusters on the one hand? And then secondly, which is very critical for us in Nigeria, how shall we as a nation deal with the expatriate quota matter? Because part of the complaints that you find is that, the Chinese, of course, considering their population, whenever they open up shop anywhere, they usually populate the place with their own nationals rather than having Nigerians. It's one thing to have factories producing here, but how do we intend to deal with the aspect of expatriate quota abuse? I know that that's a matter for Interior, but that has to be considered at this stage, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Like I pointed out, right, we are building on what my predecessor started. The difference between what we want to do and what he will do is very simple. What he was doing was his concept was for the government to be a partner in the project. For us, I believe we should allow the private sector to run. Government provide infrastructure, provide land, and let the private sector come in and be the operators of the industrial estates. For government, what does government want? We want revenue, which we will get from leasing the land. We want our people to be in work, employment. We want those who are employed to be able to pay taxes to government, revenue. So for us, it is to encourage these things to operate so that government on the back end will get revenue and also will have people employed. You touched on the issue of expatriate quotas and the idea of Chinese populating the working environments wherever they go. Well, for Nigeria, we do have laws, and we will stick to those laws. Before any company comes into Nigeria, we will sit down with them, we will negotiate with them, and we will let them know that these are our laws. If we are going to grant any concessions, it will be concessions that would be beneficial to the Nigerian populace. Why do we want to set up these companies? Mr. President has promised that his desire is that over the next 10 years, at least 100 million Nigerians should be taken out of poverty. The easiest way to do that right now is to have as many people in employment as possible. So it is for us to see to it that we can use industrialization for employment of people.
All right, Honorable Minister, we're going to take a short break now. Dr. Ken, you gave us your opening remarks, which of course you were commenting the government, and you'll see they're going to come on the other side of the coin. But that will happen after the break. You're going to advise. All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we get back, the conversation continues.
Wetin be this coronavirus thing? Na true?
You see this coronavirus, wey be COVID-19. Now the whole world palava, and it don't dey kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries them.
Okay, wetin come be the reason wey dem say make everybody tanda for house?
Now because if e dey waka pium go carry am from person wey don't get am, you go carry come give your family them. Now so the thing take dey kill other people for other countries.
Okay, wetin come be that social distancing sef?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close, because this thing now from air and touch now we dey contact am. We suppose dey at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize them alone.
Make we not take this washing of hand thing take play, but make we come together, join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other keepers now.
We're here for small businesses, the local entrepreneurs. We're here for the smiles, the good times, for those who would come from far. Put your business on the map with Visa. Where you shop matters.
No perfect family may be under threat by germs. Germs can cause infectious diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, and flu. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. In Nigeria, tens of thousands of children under the age of 5 have died due to diarrhea caused by germs. These illness-causing germs are everywhere. Dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes, in unclean bathing water. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. For surface cleaning, for first aid, for your laundry, in your bathing water, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol with aloe vera. Soothing aloe vera with the power of Dettol, which is soft on skin and hard on germs. Be Dettol Sure.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
You are welcome back. And now let's turn to Dr. Ken. It's now time for you to bring up the other side of the coin, which you promised the Honorable Minister on this conversation. Of course, you know, we are looking at what the government has been able to achieve in the last 5 years, and going forward, what are the necessities, what are the things that are required to be done to have a stable economy. And of course, you know, in every economy, the industry is inevitable. Of course, a nation that does not have a good industrial base, you must be struggling to survive.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Well, this is not condemnation, but I think the country belongs to all of us, so we don't need to condemn anybody, but we need to place some, if you like, agenda on the table so that all of us will move at the same speed. Now, I think it's important for me to take off from some of the subjects I mentioned during my commendation. And I want to start with the border closure, which has given Nigeria some mileage, beautiful one, positive mileage. But I think that it is time to begin to reconsider certain matters arising thereof. The subject of goods that have been trapped and stranded at the border since that 20th of August 2019 must be one that should attract Nigeria government's attention. Now, these goods are investments by Nigerians. I'm a member of the ECOWAS Heads of State Task Force on Trade, and we visited Nigeria, visited Benin Republic, visited Niger, and all the stakeholders there. And we've also, had consultations which the Honorable Minister of State attended in Ouagadougou, chaired by the President of Burkina Faso. And we tendered a lot of, documents. And there are a lot of statistics that are mind-blowing. When you look at, for instance, the fact that over 2,871 trucks are stranded. In fact, this issue was raised by Ghana. And I was quick to ask, have you been able to trap who are the owners of those trucks? Are you giving us figures? And I think they got a bit, the representative of Ghana was a bit, taken on our ways. And then what he didn't understand is that out of that 2,871, over 2,000 of these trucks belong to Nigerians, Nigerian traders, Nigerian manufacturers. And the reason why I'm bringing this to the table is that at this period, two things. We are having shortfall in revenue. And every kobo counts and should count for Nigeria, for us to get out of the imminent recession. And therefore, it's important for these goods to be released. Especially, let there be a kind of inquiry, investigation, inspection to understand those who have these goods. Majority of them are not smuggled goods. They were trapped there because of the pronouncement. Therefore, will it be right for us to penalize and punish those who were doing legitimate business alongside those who are smugglers? That would be unfair.
But is the border closure a matter of sanction or just a temporary measure?
It is temporary.
Yes. So it could therefore be a sanction, as it were.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense has been committed.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. It's no offense. Of course, we know that there are few of them that may have smuggled and then they are trapped there. But again, we need to dissect all of this and then remove those who are genuine traders, genuine goods. And the reason why I brought this on the table is that some of these goods are agricultural commodities leaving from here or coming into the country. And then some of them might be perishable. And some of these traders or importers may have borrowed money from the banks as well. So the investment problematics continue to roll on and on from one sector to another. And one thing that would shock you is that over 98.3% of these goods do not have insurance. So who compensates who? That's one matter.
I was just wondering, Dr. Okoha, will this be, we'll bring you in, just let him flesh out his proposal. Will this be a one-off reprieve to say, okay, we have some 2,800, nearly 3,000 trucks that have been stuck at the border on account of closure. So give them free passage, of course, complying with your regular customs checks, and thereafter we return to the border closure, or clear the 3,000 trucks and then back to business as usual.
No, it's not going to be business as usual. Now, government, and that's where I was coming into, government must now begin to come up with, one, from August 20 to this time, these are indicators, these are things that we have found out. Actually, these are measures. Very good. These are measures we want to take. And of course, in our report, we also supplied and recommended measures that could be taken and should be taken. And therefore, my concern is for my own constituency.
And sorry, that's your constituency.
Yes.
I think you need to do a kind of homework as well to determine who is a legitimate investor and who is not. That will also assist government. So let's bring in the Honorable
Minister. And it has been done anyway.
My intervention here is basically just to point out that when the borders were closed by Mr. President, it was based on complaints also by Nigerian manufacturers and Nigerian importers. There was a lot of complaints from them about smuggling activities and how it was affecting their businesses and everything. So Mr. President at the time thought to himself, look, let's shut this place down, and then he will give us an opportunity to now assess and see what can be done to bring an end to these problems. He set up a committee and an interministerial committee to look into these problems. They were supposed to report back by the end of the first quarter. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic now came into play, and that delayed things a bit. But I believe it's in my understanding that we are almost at the point whereby the report will be given to Mr. President, all the issues, all the problems that have arisen as a result of the closure, and how to ameliorate, how to stop the causes of the closure in the first place will now be reported to Mr. President with a view to seeing to it that when the borders are finally open, that we will be able to operate in a manner that will not be inimical to Nigerian manufacturers and to the Nigerian economy.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Let's bring in again Engineer Mansour Ahmed, President, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I see him on the right side there of your screen. He's joined us via Skype. Engineer Ahmed, there are 2 points I'd like you to address. One of them, of course, much deeper, and then the other will just be in terms of response. Now, coming back to the Continental Free Trade Agreement that Nigeria delayed, in signing up because it needed more domestic consultations. I recall we had you on Good Morning Nigeria after you returned from one of the continental meetings. I think it was in Niamey or so. Exactly what did President Buhari's delay caution in proceeding with appending the country's signature or ratification of that agreement? What did it signal to the other African countries who appear to have been stampeded into endorsing the agreement? That's one leg. Second leg will be, now, from policy to the industry, how friendly has the government been in terms of allowing industry to function?
Thank you very much, Kiran. First of all, let me answer the first question. Indeed, I believe that what we have found, many of the other countries, particularly ECOWAS and the smaller countries, actually came back to say, we are glad Nigeria took the position it has taken, because now it is also giving us time to look at this issue and decide what is in it for us. And I think that's vital, not just for us in Nigeria, but for all of Africa. And I believe that also what that delay has enabled us to do in Nigeria is that we are now looking at the details of this agreement. As I told you earlier on, only yesterday we were discussing at the actual products that we are going to trade in. Which products should we allow to be totally liberalized so that there is zero custom between our countries? Which products shall we have to protect? Because what most people don't seem to understand is that unless we are able to approach this intercontinental trade very carefully, we may end up creating a market for other people outside Africa rather than for us in Africa. And the only way we can protect that is to make sure that the products we are able to liberalize, the products that we say this can now be traded with zero duty, are products that we know we will be trading in Africa without any problem. So that is one issue. The second issue is that it has also enabled the government, and I'm sure the Minister of Industries will confirm this, it has enabled the government to look at all the elements, all the aspects of not just our trading policy, but our also industrial policy, and to decide that with the prospect of African Continental Free Trade Agreement, where should our policy direction lie? What should we be doing? Now, you mentioned earlier, Kire, that part of the problem is that we are not sure whether we have tradable products. But this is not true. Indeed, today, for instance, cement, Nigeria is the biggest producer and supplier of cement in Africa. And we are already beginning to see this. So let me talk with regards to that, for instance, in respect of the border closure. Yes, we agree that the border closure was necessary in order to stop all the abuses, particularly the dumping and the smuggling and so on and so forth. And the intention, I believe, was that that was going to be temporary, while we look at what are we going to put in the long term to ensure that our trading facilitation arrangements are such that we are able to protect the genuine manufacturers, the genuine traders, the genuine exporters. And I think this is what is happening now. My hope is that in the next few weeks, perhaps, the country will come up with a proper process where trading across land borders will now be organized in a way that we can achieve, we can provide access to those who are genuine traders without allowing importation of illegitimate products. I think this is the intention. And I believe that we are already beginning to see that. The cement industry alone, if today we allow the borders to be open, I can assure you that almost 1 million tons of cement will be exported out of Nigeria to other African countries. And that is a significant amount of foreign exchange that will be. And I think we must understand that it is absolutely essential that this is part of the, if you like, economic diversification that is absolutely essential. Now, let me come back to your other question, which has to do with the industrialization process. One thing, obviously, we do need to continue to encourage the foreign direct investment into our country because we need it, and because indeed there's demand for it. We understand there's a lot of money that which is to come into Nigeria. But two things. First of all, we must also encourage local domestic investment. There's a lot of investable funds in Nigeria that is ready to be invested. For instance, only a few weeks ago, when we floated the Skook bond, we found that it's oversubscribed by almost 200%. which means there's money that is willing to be invested. So if we create alternative investment rather than the that kind of portfolio, the capital market, there will be money going into industry. And the difference, the value of promoting domestic investment is, of course, that you gain from all perspectives. Secondly, we must be careful when we allow foreign investors to come in, especially in the agri sector, that they do not continue to buy land without any control. We have seen this happen in other countries, and we know the consequences. We have seen it happen in Zambia, and we are beginning to see the consequences. I believe that if foreigners come and they want land, they should lease it. We should not allow people to go and buy land, ad hocly, without control. Nigeria is one country where the land has not been registered. Only 3% of Nigeria's land is actually registered. So there's going to be a lot of problems of land ownership if we don't start to put in controls for investors coming to buy agricultural land. We're not saying they should not invest, they should invest, but they can lease. The difference is that buying the land creates a problem much longer in the future, as we have seen. So it is important that we are careful about land transactions, that we should take steps now to begin to register all our land so that we can exercise control and proper regulation on land transactions. The last item I want to talk about on this matter indeed has been raised by Ken, and that is, as we go into this continental trading agreement, we must begin to have proper data that will enable us to make decisions that are selective, that are targeted. Because to approach an issue like we did with the border closure, even though it was necessary, is counterproductive. You have to have data which shows, okay, what do you want to stop exporting? What do you want to stop importing? And how did this come? For instance, the issue of transportation, again, as Ken said, at one point there are hundreds of Nigerian trucks blocked somewhere in the borders. And I believe that with the careful analysis and with proper, monitoring, a lot of these need not happen, because those are investments by Nigerians that need to be protected as well. So it is absolutely important. Again, I come back to my earlier suggestion that consultation and engagement with the operators is absolutely vital. I believe that the issue that the Honorable Minister raised about the committee that has looked at the border closure just before the outbreak of COVID is actually true, because stakeholders were there as well. And while we agreed that, yes, the border closure has helped in many respects, we also agree that it cannot be a sustainable policy. And
yes, we have view it cannot be a sustainable policy. So, as we mentioned earlier, it's a temporal measure. Now, let's go to the tweets, because Nigerians are reacting to this conversation. Mike Anyako says, with the stabilization of the Naira over time, export promotions and the President's requests of foreign investment trips, great achievements were recorded in trade and investment sector of the economy, but a lot still needs to be done.
Well, this is coming from Festus Akimboyo, where it says President Buhari's administration is doing great by focusing on local production, reducing our trade deficit, enforcing tougher measures against smuggling, and tackling unfair trade practices by our neighboring countries. The President and his administration must continue to encourage local investors and restrict imports of what we can produce.
Chris Simeon, the economic recovery and growth plan would work stronger in trade and investment protocols and ethics put in place allowed closure of the country's borders may affect full actualization of the ERGP.
Dele Jack Solobo, the administration, that's the Buhari administration, should continue to promote initiatives that will expand facilities available to micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, robust electronic registration and payment systems, seamless processing of business registration, and reduction of costs of registering businesses.
Comrade Laji Ngala, trade between Nigeria and other countries has been boosting the economy of Nigeria, but insecurity is the #1 challenge that has been affecting trade.
Now, there have been more businesses, whether large or small scale, in Nigeria, including businesses with foreign interests. Now, this couldn't have been possible if some level playing field hadn't been provided by the federal government. However, the government needs to do more.
Law Alpha C, trade and investment under this administration would have accelerated by now, no thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has grounded the economies of countries across the globe.
Muntana Farouk, agricultural activities have given the Nigerian economy a new life, and its impact can be adequately felt in the trade and investment sector.
Ibrahim Muduaji, what is the Minister of Trade and Investment doing to checkmate the exorbitant increase of food and commodities? Is there any price control and regulatory measures across the country?
Ibrahim Bello, trade and investment in Nigeria has got a new look. Local investors and small-scale businesses have been encouraged through programs organized by the central bank. The ban on rice importation has also encouraged local rice production and consumption. This has had a multiplier effect on the economy.
Alhaji Musa Mohammed Hadejia, trade has been improved internally as a result of improving the agricultural sector, but there are still obstacles such as inadequate power for our domestic company to function optimally. As a result, there is less investment. Also, issues of insecurity such as kidnapping, banditry, and so on have also led to a drop in trade. And that's all from our viewers this morning. Kinsley.
Yeah, carry on. Honorable Minister, let's bring you in here. We're on the home stretch for this. I will have to double barrel my question. The first one, because while we were reviewing the performance of the agricultural sector, one of the issues that came up, I recall posing the question on that occasion, had to do with marketing. And the old idea of marketing buzz isn't fashionable any longer. But for many years, Nigeria has struggled to create a commodities exchange. That's within your remit. So how far with the commodities exchange, if assuming we are making any progress in that direction? One. Two, we can't have any conversation today without reference to coronavirus and COVID-19 and the massive disruptions it has occasioned, not just in terms of production, but also in terms of supplies. And I'm sure that Nigerian businesses along your line of control, particularly trade and manufacturing, will be keen to learn just how much government is ready to give them a helping hand out of the crisis of coronavirus. So two questions, commodities exchange and whether or not, the government is responding to the challenges of coronavirus for manufacturers.
Thank you very much. With regard to the commodities exchange, my ministry is engaging with the Central Bank of Nigeria with a view to partnering to create a robust commodities exchange program. At the moment, the Commodities Exchange Department they've leased a few warehouses whereby goods are stored. And like I said, we're talking with Central Bank, and the whole idea is to have a robust commodity exchange program operating in Nigeria, and we're hopeful that before the end of the year we'll be able to announce to the public how far we have gone and what we have been able to put in place. With regard to the second question, of course you must be aware, everybody is aware of what is going on in the country, everybody is aware of how it has affected the economy. So Mr. President, being conscious of this fact and trying to find a way to resolve issues and to assist the economy, set up what is called the Economic Sustainability Committee under the chairmanship of the Vice President, and included in that committee quite a few of the ministers and the Governor of the Central Bank. And the committee has met, and there are various palliatives and suggestions that have been put together. The report was submitted to Mr. President last week. I believe it will be presented to the Federal Executive Council this week. And once that is passed by the Federal Executive Council, I'm sure Mr. President will announce to the country all the steps and all the measures that are being put together to assist the economy. But with regards to my ministry, I believe I can let out a few things by what we call Expo. Or what we used to call Expo when we were in school.
Yeah, so
there are products in that report that will, there's supposed to be some funding for the MSMEs by way of grants, by way of loans. There's supposed to be funding to assist manufacturers, especially in the pharmaceutical sector. One of the things, before I even talk about that, is that government had done was that government made a regulation whereby importers of COVID-related products and medications are allowed to bring in these things duty-free. No duty to enable Nigeria to cope with the effect of COVID. So, like I said, there are measures that have been taken and that will be announced very shortly. So,
all right, Honourable Minister, time is no longer on our side, and at this point, we are concluding this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria, believing that we've done justice to the topic as much as we can.
That's right, Kira. I'm sure that Ken Okoha will go back to meet his members and let them realize that we're having a now normal situation, that trading cannot be business as usual as it was on the past.
All right, so at this point, I would like to appreciate the Honourable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Tumba Richard Adeni Yedibayo. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Ken Ukwaha is a regular feature on this program. We appreciate your insight. And of course, the president of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, we thank you so immensely for waking up with us and, of course, for your insights to this conversation. Thank you indeed for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umayo. Do have a great day.